Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. Have you ever wondered why diets, therapy, or even endless self help books don't seem to create lasting change? The truth is, most of our struggles, whether it's weight, stress, anxiety, relationship, or financial pain, all of those are driven by circuits in the unconscious mind. And unless you can rewire those circuits, you'll keep hitting the same walls over and over. Today's guest has built her life's work around that discovery. Dr. Laurel Mellin is a health psychologist, the founder of Emotional Brain Training, and a New York Times best-selling author who's been featured on Oprah 3 times, Today, and Good Morning America. Her method is evidence-based, and it is helping people all around the world rewire their brains to live healthier, happier, more purposeful lives. As many of you know, my own coaching focuses on working directly with the subconscious. So I literally could not be more excited to bring you this conversation. If you've ever felt stuck and wondered, why can't I change this? You're about to hear the answer. And the beginning of the answer is an app. You heard me right. An app that you can download. Hope you enjoy. Laurel, thank you so much for being on the show.
What a pleasure. I'm so happy
Oh,
to be here.
I am happy to have you. I'm more excited about this than you could possibly imagine. So let's just dive right in and help people as much as we possibly can.
Wonderful.
For somebody who's brand new to all this, and let's say they've never even done anything like talk therapy, nothing at all, how do they notice when their unconscious is really running their life?
Well, they may not. In other words, people don't know it. And this is part of the neurophysiology of emotional brain training is that you know what you know, right? In your thinking brain. And what you know is like not worthwhile having compared to the power of your unconscious mind. Because in the unconscious mind, there are circuits, and these circuits control the chemicals in every cell of your body. They control your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. They are who you are, is the circuits in your unconscious mind. The problem is that when those circuits are activated, they're so precious for survival of the species that there's no source attribution. There's no feeling in your body that you're remembering something. So you're convinced that this is just how it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. Whereas in truth, the circuits in the emotional brain are incredibly plastic and they're very organized. And anyone who's organized about their life who wants to get into their emotional brain, which is the controller, it's really just about two different kinds of circuits and five different tools. And once you have that down, you can control your unconscious mind.
2 and 5, that sounds really, really wonderful. And those 2 and 5 will lead you to something that everyone is seeking, right? Joy.
Exactly. So, it used to be, now I'm a health psychologist. I spent more than 40 years at the university, and we're still doing research at the university on EBT. But the issue is, we thought about positive psychology and all this stuff about happy, happy, happy. Frankly speaking, it never reached me because you don't want to be happy, happy, happy when you're sitting on a lot of trauma and stress and overwhelm the way all of us are. It just seems so disrespectful. But it turns out that neuroscientists have determined that joy is joy, meaning being present with a glow. You are in reality, you are in flow state. Even moments of that joy confer optimal physiology and the smooth workings of life. So, all the major systems in the brain, there's the stress system, the amygdala, there's the reward system, the nucleus accumbens, and there's a metabolic health system, which is the hypothalamus. Those three systems control everything. And when those are in a state of connection and we're in joy, even for a moment, it's like you had the best pharmacy you could ever have. There's no drug that will do what you can do with your own brain by making it a priority to notice when you're stressed. And when you are, use the emotional tools to get into the emotional brain. It's just called spiraling up. It takes 1 to 2 minutes and get back to joy. And when you do that, there's these beautiful chemicals that flow through every cell in your body, and you're loving. And in relationships, your spouse likes you more. And in your work relationships, you go into a room for a meeting and you're thinking, I'm never going to be able to reach these people. And all of a sudden, they're opening doors because in the human brain, what's valued is connection. And you're so connected in that state, they can feel you being authentic. They know that you're of integrity, and they can feel that loving connection of being just alive. And all of a sudden, good things happen. So it's good business, it's good health, it's good relationship. It's essentially the solution.
It sounds like the perfect solution. And 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 I have heard Deepak Chopra talk about our bodies, our minds are better than any pharmacy out there. We can create everything that we need within us. Would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely. And there's no question about it. That is the science that what's happened in our world, and this is very sad. So I'm just giving a warning here. We really bought into the model of thinking and doing. It's so convenient, it's so logical, and it's so false. You think and do and don't connect with your unconscious mind, all those incredibly beneficial circuits in there. What happens is you end up being superficial, you end up being short-sighted, and you end up suppressing your emotions and having mental health and physical health problems. The role of the unconscious mind is everything. In fact, in emotional brain training, when you first come in to do it, and we have a lot of men, like so men come in, they won't go to therapy, and for sometimes very good reason, because essentially talk therapy is not very effective. You know, you can go in for 5 or 10 years and you could hash over all your problems. You can reveal yourself to somebody. Why? The outcomes are not very good. And the reason the outcomes are not very good is most therapy is based on cognitive and behavioral functioning, which is in the thinking brain. It's the wrong brain. The right brain, in other words, the right hemisphere, and the correct brain, if you want transformation in your life, is to step over that thinking brain barrier and connect with your body. It's so easy. You connect with your body and you notice whether you feel grounded or not, where you're aware of the sensations and emotions in your body. If you're not, you're in deep trouble. You are not going to be effective. And it's because you're in stress. And so when you're in stress, the stress chemicals disconnect us. And so what we do is we say, the reason I am disconnected right now is because I have a circuit, a stress circuit it's called. It's also called scientifically an allostatic circuit, a circuit in my brain that is activating the stress chemicals that are making me rigid, difficult, confused, overwhelmed, and not very nice and not very happy. And so the problem is not me, it is not psychological. Really clear. EBT is not psychotherapy, it's not lifestyle change, and it isn't medication. It's an entirely different class. It is unique in that we've codified the tools to use those resiliency pathways in the brain and rewire trauma from the past or whatever it is. And you simply say to yourself, no shame, no blame. It's just one of those stress circuits in my brain. And so I am going to take the EBT app. I'm going to take 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to essentially discharge and unravel that circuit that's making me have this chemical response where I'm just not quite my best self. And automatically the brain activates a different kind of circuit, what we call a joy circuit. Now, scientifically, these are called allostatic circuits and homeostatic circuits, but just to keep it fun, because we always keep it fun, it is a stress circuit. In a couple minutes, you switch off all those chemicals. You can feel it in your body. All of a sudden, you're so charismatic, you're so effective, you're so wise, and you switch on the joy circuits. And the more you do that, you have two benefits. In the moment, you're a really great human being. You feel great about yourself and you're effective. And your chemicals that cause chronic diseases and mental health problems have been deactivated. More importantly, you've also activated your optimal biochemistry, the joy chemicals. So all the advantages of being loving and warm and insightful and of higher purpose, all of those chemicals come in. And those chemicals like was said, is the best thing that anyone could have. There's no pharmacy, even if you had 10 drugs or 20 drugs, it can't do what our brain naturally does by taking those 2 minutes to get not only present in the moment to feeling great, but this is the key. You change your brain for good. Every time you get back to joy, that connection, that flow state, the brain changes until you realize it takes about a month to get used to getting out of stress and getting connected, and a couple months to rewire some circuits. And then what happens as you stay with it is all of a sudden you are wired for joy, for flow, for connection, for wisdom. And so your natural state, your brain wants to go back to that because that's what's familiar. And that is the best thing that anyone can do for their health, become wired for joy, and no one can buy it. I don't care whether you're the President of the United States or the Pope or anyone, it doesn't happen unless you get to joy over and over again using these neuroscientific, very simple tools.
Golly, I want to just keep you forever. I have a billion things to follow up on that. So I'm just going to stick with one. One of the things that you said was that everyone has trauma. And I think there are people who don't think they do. Could you go into that a little bit?
Right. Well, trauma is part of life. It is, there's big trauma and little trauma, but trauma is part of life. And you never asked to have trauma, but everyone has it. One of the differences is that people don't understand necessarily that stress can take three forms. When your style of stress in your own brain is to go low, you know you're stressed. You know you have trauma because you're going to get into a panic, or you're going to get ashamed, or going to get sometimes, really anxious or really depressed, and everyone's happy to tell you that you have emotional health issues. Unfortunately, most people don't go low. I go low. I know I get anxious or I get depressed, but the typical person actually goes numb. And particularly men have no idea that they have a horrible problem with stress overload, which is why relationships are so hard. Or they can't stop drinking, or they can't stop the eating, or they get hooked on things that take them into places they don't want to go. And so more men are apt to go numb than to go low, and then misinterpret it that they have a mental health problem or a chronic disease. Those are consequences, but the real problem is that they need to be able to clear their stress and get back to that joy state. Some people go to a false high. They just go, some people call it denial, everything's just fine. Yes, I just had an amputation because of my uncontrolled diabetes. And yes, I just had a DUI, but actually I'm just fine. So whether you go high, low, or numb, that is all stress. And everyone has stress because early in life, even small stressors that you wouldn't even tag as neglectful or whatever, just small moments. Like I remember being in my front yard when I was about 4 years old of my house nearby. And my brother went across the street with his friends because he was bigger and he could go. And I was told I couldn't go with the friends and I had to stay behind. I can remember that to this day. But the problem is for the young mind, under the age of 5, trauma happens with very small transgressions. And what happens is if you don't essentially go into your unconscious mind and clear some of that, you don't have to go back to when you were 5, but be alive to the circuits in your unconscious mind and clear them. You live with that knot inside of you, that closed down where you're not fully alive. You're just coping and going from one excess to another all day. You need external solutions because the trauma is still there. So everyone has trauma. And also, if there were people who didn't have any trauma, you would have to feel sorry for them. Because if you use EBT, so you know that you get to joy, you know you have those resiliency pathways, so why not use something that you have when it's the most valuable thing you have, right? Um, and what happens is when you go into, let's say you notice you're not in joy. I was just at my son's house in upstate New York, and he has 3 children now and a wonderful wife, and we visited for 3 days in the Trumansburg, which is near the Finger Lakes. And I had some memories come up when I was there that took me all the way down to a brain state 5. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And in that moment, I knew that it was a wire that had come up from some past memory. So I didn't judge myself. I knew exactly what to do. I reached for my EBT app and I jumped over my thinking brain of self-judgment or self-analysis or rumination. I cleared those emotions in about 3 minutes, and in front of me came this beautiful image of when I had been a little girl, and also the unconscious, unreasonable expectation I had to be perfect that arose from my unconscious mind to my conscious mind so I could completely erase the circuit. Okay. Now, if that's not fun, I don't know what is. So, what it means is that if in those moments of terror, because we all have them and we need them, if you can stay somewhat present to your body and your sensations and emotions, and use these skills, you will actually raise the set point of your brain so that instead of being in stress, it's more toward joy. It's beneficial, but more than that, it's the only way you grow up. The way we become emotional adults, where we don't feel like we're just a little boy who's 12 with very long legs or a little girl who's 8 who is crying out to mama, but actually an emotional adult is to momentarily get that spark going, clear that circuit, and in that moment, I knew myself better, I felt more powerful, and I loved myself more. So having these skills in your back pocket, just this app, just having those skills can be transformative, not only to your health and happiness, but your self-love and your self-knowledge. Who am I anyway? What am I doing here? Who do I want to be in this world? That comes from going inside into your unconscious mind and finding the answers there in literally a couple of minutes.
Okay, so let's say I'm a 40-year-old male engineer, and I'm listening to this podcast, and I keep hearing you talk about this app. You're telling me I don't have to go talk to anyone face to face?
No, you don't have to talk to anyone face to face.
Woo! All right, man, this is cool.
Yeah, you know what? There's no guru in EBT. It's all scientific. It's very quantitative. You figure out what level of stress you're in. Of course, level 1, where the top of the brain is in charge, that's joy. And then you get more stress, it's level 2. And those are both good because they're both having those joy wires that are really chemically good for your health and your mental health and your physical health. And then it slips into no man's zone, which is right around where your cheekbone is. So if you put your finger on your cheekbone, that's where we get in trouble. With more stress, the brain puts the lower part in brain, it puts the unconscious mind in charge. And when you're there, it doesn't really help to say, how do I feel? In fact, say to your partner, when their partner asks you, how do you feel? You'd say, well, I'm actually at brain state 3 right now. And in brain state 3, my feelings are scattered. And so I'm going to tell you that I'm going to go use the app for 1 minute. It clears away the scatteredness, and you get back to knowing how you feel and what you need. If your partner asks you how you feel when you're at brain state 3 or 4, it's an aggressive act because you don't know how you feel because your feelings are either scattered, stuck, or toxic. So essentially, what we're doing is taking the opportunity to to spiral up through our emotions and find our best selves without listening to anyone else. So you come in, you get the app. First thing you do is you create moments of flow state. That takes about 1 minute, and there's 7 different ways to do it. That's the first thing on the app that you do is the flow state. We call it the joy points. And you get your body used to feeling great. You're not really, most people aren't conscious that they don't feel as good as they could until they try this. And then you say, okay, I'm bored. So what I'm going to do is learn to check my stress level. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. There's a different emotional technique for each level of stress because emotions behave very differently. So all you have to know is your number. You touch a few buttons, and it takes you along that resiliency pathway right back to joy. And then you say, this feels really good. And then you say, hey, I want more. And you find a few issues or problems that normally you'd go to a therapist for, right? Except you are the therapist because all this is about is taking these stress circuits that therapists try to teach to and and moving them along your brain's beautiful resiliency pathway, and you'll end up clearing the circuit, feeling great, and resolving the issue. So you say, let's see, I'm drinking too much, so I'm going to rewire that habit circuit. Oh, I get really numb, so I'm going to rewire that mood circuit. Something to do with work is usually a block from stress. So some role you play or something you do at work, and then also a relationship pattern, because always in stress, we either merge with the other person and give too much and then are resentful, and we just give and give and give that's in ridiculous ways that aren't healthy for anyone, or we distance and judge and feel lonely. This is what happens in the brain in stress. So either merging and being overly close or distancing and being overly removed, those tendencies, those sparks of drives or triggers in relationships stop. So you do that, and then you just stay with it after that and until your brain actually does it automatically. Within the first 3 months, people go to their doctor and their biochemistries have changed tremendously. A lot of their health problems have already resolved, but to have lasting results, you want to change the set point of the brain because the set point is used to being at a stress level. You want to get that natural state to be in joy so you don't have to work hard. The brain does the work for you. Now, you do have opportunities to go into groups, to have coaching. Um, Groups are particularly effective because you listen to somebody else and it turns out they have the same circuits you do. We're all in
Mhm.
this together. So there's the option to do it, but essentially we're facing that this process works for all people all the time, but you need the app to learn the process.
That is absolutely brilliant, my dear. I am so impressed because, not just men, I think everyone has a resistance to, I'm 58 years old. I had never been to a therapist in my life and I had a horrible traumatic childhood. But I just my go-to was work. It wasn't alcohol like both of my parents, it was work. And so I just worked constantly, constantly, constantly. And then I got this huge tumor that came up. And until I rewired my brain, I couldn't understand. I had no, I was a people pleaser. And I want to speak to my folks right now, all of you out there that are people pleasers, you're not trustworthy. And I'm not trying to be mean because I was one. And I never realized that during that time, I was not an honest person. Not in a bad way. I wasn't like being dishonest, but if you came and you stepped on my toe, I wouldn't say a word because I'm a people pleaser. And you could come and you could step on my toe 20 times. And then the 21st time, I'm done with you. And you're going, what? Why? Well, I never bothered to tell you. I didn't like you stepping on my toe because I was a people pleaser. And so when you clear this stuff, tell me one of your favorite stories of a client that was this and is now this.
Well, I don't know where to begin, but I will tell you something that EBT is based on neuroscience, not psychotherapy, but neurophysiology. And the circuit you're speaking about, Kara, is called a survival circuit. This is very important to know. What happens is when we're in low stress, our feelings tell us what we need, right? How do I feel? What do I need? But once you cross that line, you're not in brain state 1 or 2 with the homeostatic joy circuits ruling you biochemically, but you're in 3, 4, or 5 with the allostatic stress circuits that have no shut-off valve. So once you're in there, you are trapped. You could be stressed for weeks once it's triggered. They are called survival circuits. What that means is that when the brain has ever been stressed, when you've been stressed, particularly when you're young, but after that too, and you don't feel safe, the brain takes this fight or flight drive, a fight or flight drive, with all those chemicals, enough to lift a car off a screaming baby, with all those chemicals, and it latches onto it, whatever you did in the moment. So if in that moment you people pleased, you merged with someone else and you pleased others, or let's say you distanced, or you shut down emotionally, or you got depressed or anxious, or ate something or drank something or whatever that is. So you take this big old gargantuan fight or flight response in that moment and it latches on to whatever you did. And if you don't process that emotionally before you go to bed, it will lock it into long-term memory where it's practically hardwired. What that means is that response, whether that's merging, people pleasing, drinking, eating, whatever that is, it now is all puffed up with the power of a survival drive. So the next morning, like I had food as one of my circuits, I had also depression and I had merging. But what happens is the next morning when you wake up, you are a different person. You have a survival circuit that, through no fault of your own, if some stimulus that's somewhat like what happened before comes into your brain, the circuit is going to be activated. You are going to reflexively perform the same thing you did before as if your life depended upon it, is biochemically driven. Now, what that means is that the current addiction definition by the American Psychological Association is completely bogus because it's based on, oh, how many drinks do you have? Or how many, whatevers do you have? Why would you care? What you care about is the root cause. The root cause of all these problems is the same thing: survival circuits. We all have them, and EBT with the cycle tool, the cycle tool that helps you spiral up back to joy, dismantles those circuits, teases apart that people pleasing from the fight or flight response, and you are free. And you know that you've rewired it because it takes, some of them take a lot more work than others. When you rewire it, not by going to the therapist and having them tell you what's wrong with you or analyze your childhood, it's because you have used EBT enough to erase that circuit and replace it with a circuit that makes you happy and healthy and have wonderful relationships. And so what happens is you notice, oh my gosh, I'm not people pleasing anymore. Oh my gosh, I left that food on the table. Oh my gosh, I've had fewer drinks. What happened there? Is because you have changed the circuits in your unconscious mind, which is the only true pathway to transformation. And it's in an app.
And it's in an app, you guys. It's in an app. This is so cool. So we've all heard people talk about triggers and all that. What you're saying is we can remove those triggers so no one can trip your trigger.
Exactly. Erasure is the name of the game. It's called, in science, it's called extinction versus reconsolidation. If you go to a CBT program, cognitive behavioral, which almost everybody goes to that, which is a total waste of time, it works well on the different kinds of habits you have that are very narrow or really weren't wired during trauma. But then they come back because you don't rewire the circuit. What happens in basic programs is you stack up good circuits, healthy circuits on top of rotten circuits. So all of those trauma circuits are down in the bottom of your brain. They're much stronger than the other circuits. And you just keep trying to condition yourself to do the other thing. Well, you're sitting on dynamite. And as soon as whatever happens, and that stress circuit from the past that you have not bothered to rewire goes boom, it wipes out all your progress. You think you're back to square one because you are, because you didn't go to the root cause. That's called extinction. In EBT, we use what's called reconsolidation. Same person. Let's say you got triggered, and all of a sudden, you have a tendency to people please or a tendency to whatever that is. You have a tendency in that moment. The circuit that is causing you to do that is online, it is unlocked, and if you take action with the EBT app during that time, you will weaken or erase that circuit. It only stays open for about 2 hours. What it does is you briefly stress activate it. You have to have that brief activation of stress. And what happens is it unlocks a circuit, it presents to you what the unconscious message is, you present the opposite unconscious method, and you essentially dismantle the old circuit, erase it, and replace it with a circuit of your choosing. Whatever that message is you want to have in your brain, you give it, and the brain takes it in. So erasure works. Packing healthy habits on top of big trauma circuits is essentially very vulnerable. And that's why there's so many people using medications or going to therapy forever because we're not rewiring the stress circuits in the bottom of our brain. That's why we want everyone to have the EBT app, is because if you want to erase and replace that circuit, not live with it, and then be always drawn, should I do it? Should I not do it? Am I going to be good? Am I going to be bad? Again, we want that freedom.
Okay, humor me for a minute and tell me whether or not my thought on this is good. You can get in your car, you can drive to work, you get to work and you're like, oh my God, how did I get here? I wasn't even paying attention, right? And so all of that is your unconscious and it's driving you. What your work is doing is you are wiring your subconscious to do good things, not the bad things anymore.
Exactly.
Okay.
And to make it automatic. What I love is the fact that for some of the studies on EBT, there's 14 studies that have shown that it produces lasting results after treatment ends, and nothing does that, right? You have to take drugs forever, you have to whatever. But one is right now, a lot of people are taking those GLP-1 drugs, which is just so sad. It's sad because two things. Number one, the world did not really understand how painful it is to have cravings. When you have food cravings and noise, it is absolutely miserable. So what they did is they didn't teach people to rewire the circuits that drive them to overeat. Instead, just put them on diets. And so I believe everyone should do whatever they can to feel better because it's so miserable. And if you need to take GLP-1 for a while, definitely take it. But GLP-1 does not get rid of your stress circuit and it doesn't encode a joy circuit. And so you get rid of the symptom as long as you take it, but you don't go to the root cause. So you're basically set up to pay the insurance companies for how many years. And also because you're giving just one chemical, and there's actually 8 chemicals in a joy circuit that are appetite suppressants, and 8 in the stress circuits that make you hungry. When you do this naturally with EBT, you get a balance in all 8 of the chemicals. If you inject yourself with GLP-1 only, you're going to get starvation and you're going to get symptoms and you're going to get dependency.
Mm.
So the issue is that we have a medicine chest in our brain. We're not using it. And the more stress we're getting, and everyone is stressed these days, the more the drug companies are going to own us. We're going to have so many different drugs. Then the drugs all interact, and then you have to get drugs to treat the whatever's going on of side effects from those drugs. All you have to do is commit to getting wired for joy. Just pay attention to how you feel. Take it seriously. Get the app, spiral up to that flow state. Everything goes better until it becomes automatic. And the pharmacy, the best of all pharmacies, is in your own brain, so it's free.
This is so brilliant. How in the heck did you figure this out?
Well, I started when I was 28 and I had my own problems, depression and merging and food. And I was at the university where we always research everything, right? And I thought this CBT stuff isn't working for my patients. And I went down into the basement, 7 floors down in the UCSF library. And I found this old study from a woman named Hildebrook from Baylor College of Medicine. And she was looking at the patterns in the family of kids that were obese. And she says, and I was looking at her research. I said, oh my gosh, all she's talking about is emotional connection. And I was 20. I can just make skills to teach people emotional connection. Lo and behold, I made the skills, and the research showed, oh my gosh, it's really working. But what changed my life was one woman who was in this program. I'm getting goose pimples just saying it. In this program, because the parents learned the skills and so did the children. She came up to me and she actually grabbed hold of me right outside of my office at the university. And she says, "What are you doing to my daughter?" And I didn't know whether she was mad at me or what. And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "She used to be addicted to food. She would steal money out of my purse to go buy candy at the store. And she was so depressed. And now she doesn't care about the food and she just wants to go out and play and be happy." And also then she said, "And whatever you did to her, I want too." And so what I did is at that moment as a young woman, I will never forget it because I knew that I would be a bad person if I didn't figure out what was going on in the brain. And clearly it would take 25 years before the science was published that explained what is going on in the unconscious mind with the way EBT uses emotional processing to make it quick and effective that was making the difference. And now I'm 76. And so I've been doing this, almost 50 years. But the issue is I stayed with it because you couldn't not. You just could not. And I will say I do work 7 days a week, and it's not an addiction. What it is a love affair. I've had 3 children. I've been married and divorced. I'm now ecstatically, happily married, and I'm living a wonderful life. And I have so much energy because I have the joy energy. I'm wired for joy. And that's what causes the longevity and the sense of love of life to be sustained. And that's what I'm grateful to have been lucky enough to develop EBT and all the people that have helped. It's a whole community, really.
Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah. Nothing this great is a single person that did it. Wow. Okay. So first step is just get the app.
Absolutely. This app has 50 years of research in it. And I want to tell you that one of the slogans in EBT, because it's science. Now, I'm a health psychologist, and psychologists in general are not necessarily the most gleeful people you've ever met, right? Because they're serious or whatever. Well, I'm a health psychologist, and I know health is about going into the stress and coming out in joy. But we have slogans in EBT, and we have doctors that are certified, and therapists that are certified, and nutritionists that are certified to teach EBT. But essentially, we have slogans because every single bit of this method is scientific. We had to actually recreate it in 2007 when we realized there were 5 levels of stress, not 3. And it was so painful, and so many people were mad at me. I said, we can't continue with 3 levels of stress because the brain has to go down to trauma and the brain has to go up to joy. But they were so mad at me. But it was so challenging. It took me about 3 years to rebuild it around the new model. And then since then, making it more fun and faster. But the issue is because it's all science, not psychology, but essentially neuroscience, we can have fun with it. And so one of the slogans for EBT is, if it's not fun, it's not EBT. So in keeping with that, the latest version of the app, and the new one is coming out just this week. And it's not available on the App Store. It's only available through our website. Um, but you just choose whether you want to touch on 1, 2, or 3. And if you go in, let's say you're not in joy, and you say, and you can see it's right here. It's, do I want to spend 1 minute for an instant boost? No one should have an open checkbook on anyone's time. So, if I press 1, I will feel 80% great in about a minute. If I push 2, quick and easy, I can see all the 5 tools. So if I'm down there and I need damage control because I'm in brain state 5, I can use that, or cycle tool, or any of these tools. I have a full space. I basically own my unconscious mind. I have all 5 skills right in front of me. I touch on quick and easy, and that takes 2 minutes. If I want to do deep work that I would normally do with a therapist, but I'm doing it myself with, there's support groups and there's coaching, but I still have the tools in my hand. I push on 3, deep work, and that's where I erase those circuits for lasting results. 1, 2, or 3. Make it fun, go at your own pace, and discover how powerful you can be. And also that you have a capacity for joy and love and forgiveness and hope and awe and compassion that you can't find any other way than having your brain be in that state of flow and connection.
Well, it's obviously, and I'm talking about credibility for you and for what you do. The fact that you were on Oprah 3 different times. I mean, I think somebody could stumble and get on there once, but 3 different times, how did that happen?
Well, you know what? I think it's divine grace. I believe in divine grace. I believe in connecting to the deepest part of yourself. And I've learned the hard way that you can't you have to be organized. You have to work very hard. But what you need to do is connect to the deepest part of yourself and ask for support. Because when you're connected to the deepest part of yourself in your emotional brain, you not only have optimal physiology, but you have spiritual connection, because the emotional brain is the seat of the soul. So it's a matter of, for me, when I've gotten into over control, and believe me, I've been turned down more times than I have. And there are people in San Francisco, and there's a lot of people in San Francisco.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you there, and I don't ever interrupt anyone, but I do want you to talk about that. You've been turned down more than others. You have probably failed so much more than most people.
I have lots of
Talk
stories.
about that. Talk
Oh
about that
my
just for a
gosh.
second.
The only way that I've ever survived is with the EBT tools. But remember that uh, we're everyone's against us. The only one who's not against us is the population, the people in our society that are suffering. Because Big Med is against us, Big Psych is against us, Big pharma, watch out. In fact, this attorney we have a lot of attorneys and physicians in EBT, and this man said to me, Laurel, if you ever put EBT up for sale, the pharmaceutical company would buy it, and then they'd have to sequester it because they'd have to research it to be really sure it was safe enough. They would get rid of it because nothing can compete with it. So essentially, the current psychotherapists, we have brilliant psychotherapists that come in at the top of their game and they become EBT providers that are magnificent. But most therapists are staying with traditional therapy. And the difference is if you don't get into the emotional brain, specifically the amygdala that stores all the circuits that make you respond, if you don't get into that amygdala and change it directly, you will not measurably change. You will cope better. You'll feel a little bit better. EBT allows you on day one, you learn, watch these videos and you learn how to use the app, and you can also go into our drop-in groups we have every day if you want. And what happens is you go directly into your amygdala, find the exact circuit that's causing you to have more stress than you need to have. And an fMRI, the best brain scan, cannot find the circuit that makes you get triggered, overeat, drink too much, go numb, but your brain can.
Amen.
So what I'm saying is we have a crisis worldwide. Number one crisis is stress circuits are in people's brains. Nobody's using EBT hardly. There's only been 500,000 people that have used it. It should be in every person's basic toolkit. And so we're suffering from stress more and more and more. And if we don't turn that around with EBT and get people to have the power to go into their own amygdala, clear out whatever circuit they want, keep the ones they want, get control over their unconscious mind, the health of America will continue to decline. And when that goes, what happens is all sorts of beautiful things like children growing up in happy families, people living to an old age in loving connection, all the things that make life worth having are going to be gone. And so I'm saying everywhere I've turned, I've been turned down. It's not a problem because I know if I go to 5, I have a good cry. I open my hand to the spiritual and saying, I'm part of something more. Little Laurel Mellin cannot have what she wants when she wants it. I'm going to take that tight fist of over control and release it and say, I'm here to be of service. And this is the important part. And this is a tool within EBT. It's called the transcendence tool. If you want to be successful in life, use this tool because what happens is after surrendering to the goodness of life, that I am not about my ego, I'm about being of service and feeling that shift in your body, the next thing that you do, and I do it almost every day, I did it this morning, is I ask for help. And when you're in that space of connection to something that's more, however you define it, there's no religion in EBT, it's just biochemical, it's electrical, it's part of the human spirit. You either get it absolutely immediately, I mean, literally within seconds, or the next day, and it will come at you in ways that you cannot believe how beautiful it was. And so that's how, when you get into your unconscious mind, you're affecting your health, but you're also affecting your spirituality as you define it and the deeper meaning of your life and your ability to ask for help, not to have to do it all yourself.
Right on. I literally believe I could talk to you for 10, 12 hours straight without stopping. What questions have I not asked you that I should have?
Oh, I think you did beautifully. I think you asked beautiful questions. I will say one thing, that right now, what's most important in life for biochemically is our relationships. And as much as we can take medications for, whatever thing is going wrong with our bodies, our high blood pressure or whatever, you can't take medications for relationships. And so we have a program in EBT where you learn the skills right away. And anyone who wants to apply them for relationships, we highly recommend it. And this is why. If you have a partner that the love has gone away, or there's just you're not having great sex anymore, you're not having lots of belly laughs, you're not having great companionship, it is because of stress circuits. Because if these stress circuits are in your brain, it dampens down everything. And so what we say, if you're in a relationship that isn't as great as you want it to be, or even if you're at the point of saying, I think I'm going to call it quits, get into EBT, give it 6 months. In 6 months to a year, you will have a different relationship. Now, maybe you will still leave that relationship, but you'll leave it with the circuits that will have you go on to other relationships that are much more satisfying. Or maybe you'll find that you fall in love with your partner again. But understand the big problem with the stress in society isn't necessarily diabetes or heart disease or cancer even. It's, of course, the stress causes the cancer. It is the fact that it takes the most beautiful thing in life, which is a multi-layered experience of looking at your loved one, and it completely destroys it. So look at your loved one and say, when we got together, there was something special there. What happened is stress got in the way. And in any relationship, and as much as you can point, they're the problem and I'm not, or I'm the problem and they're not, it's always both people. Because if someone's at brain state 5, they're not going to be very nice. And if they're at 5 and you don't know how to get to brain state 1, to joy, where you can be intimate, that relationship's going to go downhill. So essentially say it's just about stress, it's not us. Even if one person in the marriage or the relationship raises their set point of their brain to out of stress to joy, and even in the first weeks of using EBT changes their responses, the old relationship with all its problems is going to fade, and the opportunity is for a new relationship to form.
I could not agree more. That is something I was warned about when I went into this work and got rewired, is all of your relationships will change.
Yeah.
Mostly your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
All of your relationships will change. And I will tell you, it is beautiful. I mean, it truly is beautiful. Guys, my goodness, you've got nothing to lose here. Nothing. Well, I guess there's a fee for it. There's a fee for the app. What is that?
Well, the fee for the app is $29 a month to have essentially a therapist in your pocket that's yourself. And then it goes all the way up to we have everything. This is a public health approach. We want it to be very affordable. It's expensive, of course, to have this app for us. And so there's a fee for the app. But it's not on the App Store, only on our website of ebt.org. But then people add support. So you can go up a little bit, and then every single day there's a health professional there showing you how to do it. You can get into a private group. You can do coaching. You can come to my private practice, and you can essentially also have a 30-day intensive where you go every day. So the price range is really high, but we have a very low price point for people to get started because we want everyone to have this app.
Just get started. And the best thing for probably most of our listeners, because most of you are men, I don't know if you realize that or not, but most of my listeners, 74% of you are men. You don't have to bare your soul in front of another human to get started. That's big. That is big. And it's not just men. That was me as well. Like it is wonderful. Okay. So what books, podcasts, what kind of things should people be listening to that have helped you?
Well, what helps the most is for you to go to ebt.org because that's the hub internationally. You get everything you need from certified providers to the app to videos, and I'm there every single Wednesday night. And so you can come and see me, but also every single day we have live people there because when you use this app and listen to other people, it is much more effective. So we want to have that available. But I have lots of books. I don't necessarily recommend them. If you're a person that really wants to read books, go to Amazon. I've got books on there, and there's a few simple books. There's a new one on weight loss and all that. But mainly, if you've been inspired and you have a notion that this could help you in any way, and those that you love, share it with the others you love. Just go to ebt.org, get started, and we'll help you see differences in your life right away.
That is beautiful. I cannot thank you enough for spending this much time and just giving this much good information to our people.
Okay, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.